Welcome to this week's Concurrency Beer 30. I'm Nathan Wisnowski, Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer, and this week with me is Matt Smith. Matt Smith is our manager of our ServiceNow practice at Concurrency. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks.
Matt, tell me a little bit about the beer you're drinking.
Excellent. It's called Supper Club by Capital Brewery, and it's nice and smooth and relaxing for a Friday afternoon.
What about a fish fry? You going to a fish fry later?
I really like to. I'm going to a high school football game instead to see my nephew play.
Well, there you go. That's two things that go pretty well together. Just
Beer and
football
football.
So there you go. I think great minds think alike, or fools seldom differ, but I'm having the same thing.
Nice.
Loving the Supper Club. It's not too hoppy. I'm a big hoppy person, and good sort of end of summer drinking beer, so glad to have it.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, we're not here to talk about just beer. We're here to talk about ServiceNow.
Yep.
And I'd like to start off with something that maybe what people think about when they think about ServiceNow, and that's ITSM. ServiceNow seems to have a clear command of the ITSM market. There's some upstarts in the market as well, and I'd like to hear from you. Why ServiceNow is still in the ITSM market? With everything that's going on, with the way that things are transforming, what makes ServiceNow continue to be the leader in that space?
Sure. Well, ServiceNow, from an IT service management standpoint, is the upper right of the Gartner quadrant, and for a very good reason. There's a number of other players in the market, just given the fact that the tool is highly flexible and capable of meeting the business needs of a medium to a large size organization. A lot of times there isn't really another good option in the market, so that's why a lot of clients and customers decide to land with ServiceNow as a product.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think ServiceNow continues to command that level of penetration in the ITSM space, versus ones that might be a little bit less expensive or a little bit more from the entry space? You feel like it continues to just hit the mark. Like, what makes it special?
Sure. Yeah. Real good question. So one thing is they're in the cloud, so they allow some flexibility as it relates to. There's a lot of other competitors that are still on-prem, or looking at going to the cloud for the product, and ServiceNow is wholly a cloud product. The other key differentiator is they're capable of covering a number of different rooms within the IT service management space, where some of the other tools may just focus on ticketing. Within the IT service management space for ServiceNow, capable of looking at problem management, incident management, change management, virtual agent, a number of other things that are much newer in the tech stack, and something to which ServiceNow is a key differentiator in the market on.
They seem to be pretty innovative in some of the things that they're doing as well. I know we were talking about Teams as a group, Microsoft Teams as a group, and ServiceNow's even developed some interesting plays there.
Yeah. So as it relates to virtual agent, the virtual agent is capable of operating native within the Teams platform. So it provides end user a seamless experience as it relates to the way that they interact with the service desk, the way that they interact with project teams, the way that they happen to use their telephony. So ServiceNow is very, very close in relationship to being a good integrator across the product stack into Microsoft.
And that's a native Teams bot that's interacting with ServiceNow, right?
Yep, native Teams bot, and it's capable of interacting with their incident management module, their problem management module, along with their service catalog and their knowledge base. So it covers a number of the very primary needs that an end user may have as they interact with ServiceNow through leveraging Teams. So it makes the experience much easier.
Mm. Yeah, we sometimes talk about like meeting the customer where they're at, but I think ServiceNow meets the internal customer where they're at, right?
Yes, exactly. And leave the complexities related to how the product is supported and how those team members or those end users are ultimately served to the technologists that are on the other side.
Interesting. I think one of the things that we're talking about now, and you mentioned when we mentioned the differentiation around ServiceNow, is that it's not just a ticketing system, right? The idea that it facilitates ticketing, facilitates basic incident management, but it's also keeping pace with the transformation of the technology business and how it's transforming into a core part of every business. There's some features within ServiceNow that address IT business management and its relationship to the business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we're finding a number of customers and clients we partner up with that are interested in or looking at leveraging the product within the project portfolio management space. So it allows an IT organization to move much more into the lens of operating as a business entity. And a lot of the things that we've done with customers in that space around effective governance around the way that they make decisions on projects, effective oversight around those projects themselves, and the way that the dashboards get radiated out to executive leadership along with project managers, et cetera. and then the financial management aspect of it. So that PPM module kind of wraps a number of really business processes that historically kind of happened within IT and have expanded them further beyond into the business as business decisions are being made around technology.
I think when a lot of people think about project portfolio management, they think about PMOs, and they think about kind of almost the old and tired sort of legacy model of aggregating projects and making decisions on them. And I think that's, to an extent, understanding what's on track, off track is part of this, but you're talking about something much bigger and more capable than that, aren't you?
Very much so. And it's a system that's capable of empowering an organization to federate out some of that decision making. So it serves as that one-stop shop in the way the decisions are made, but they don't have to have one group like a classical PMO to be that heavy government to oversee it. So ServiceNow, the PPM product, the ITPM product, enables that to happen a little bit more organically and much closer to the business versus having one entity kind of oversee it.
Can you tell me a little bit about how a customer of ours or customers that you've interacted with have leveraged this technology to govern their business technology spend? Let's say they have $100 million they want to spend on new business development to create products. How have they leveraged this to be able to differentiate where that spend goes?
Sure. So we have one customer in particular that I'm engaged with that has leveraged the product. Originally, they started just looking at leveraging it from a demand process standpoint. So they wanted to get after what are the demands out there and what is the financial aspect of that? How much is going to cost us? What's our relative return on investment? So that's where we originally started with them, and now we're building more and more of their business process within the tool and helping them to find it out at the same time. So getting after their ideas process, which a lot of times naturally happens before something turns into a demand. And then on the flip side of it is once a demand turns into a project, the financial oversight and management of that and the actual costs that are going to hit the books on within their organization, that's another thing we're working with them on as well. So we started with the demand space and then kind of stretched it into the ideas and also the project execution space.
Got it. So it's being used not only to manage the demand for new capabilities, new projects, but then through to determining if it's a good idea, should they continue forward with it, and ROI on the tail end.
Correct. So ROI is married to it throughout the process. Expectations around what's going to be the relative return and how expensive something going to be, and then on the flip side of it, what were the actuals? So the system is capable of wrapping all those things together and empowering an organization to have that level of oversight around their spend and their investments.
Got it. You can see how that'd be really valuable, especially as the business is taking on more of that decision-making power with the value of money and what its payoff is.
Yep.
But then also needs that governance to kind of help it make the right decision in the right way.
Yeah, very much so. And organizations are now moving into the space of being much more mature, where historically technology decisions and the investment decision was ultimately kind of housed within IT, or IT kind of served as the ultimate steward of it. Mm-hmm. Now that technology it's part of the lifeblood of most organizations, the decision making is much more starting to evolve and shift towards being much more on the business side, because those are the people that are ultimately have the ability to invest, they have the checkbook. At the same time, they're able to help prioritize what's the most important for an IT organization to spend their time on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. When you think about that job of governance, and the shifting role of the corp IT organization into a governance organization and away from delivery, how do you see that role in the project portfolio management and IT business management in relationship to the business working? What's the role of IT versus what's the role of the business in making those decisions?
Sure. So the role of IT is to empower the business to have visibility and also the ability to know where they need to make a choice and make a decision. And the business is ultimately responsible for being a steward of what kind of investments make the most sense and what's the expected relative return, and making sure they're making good use of their internal IT horsepower and also external IT horsepower that they have at their disposal to align with the business value that they're looking at getting after. So the biggest thing from an IT standpoint is provide the visibility to those that are the best to make the decision, empower them to make the decision, and ultimately fulfill upon their wishes and desires.
Got it. Now these capabilities, they're relevant whether you have project portfolio management practices or not, right? Like let's say you're using Microsoft Project, or you're using DevOps or an Agile process or something like that. This can complement those, right? It doesn't have to replace them.
Correct. So what we're finding is within the execution space specifically, there's a number of customers are a little bit more mature, where they're used to using a tool that's agile focused and or Kanban focused. Their pattern's built out and they're very happy with it. So in those cases, we integrate between ServiceNow and that platform, because those teams have what they need in order to be successful. And this just is a wrapper that kind of wraps around it to provide the appropriate level of visibility around the way that the investments are taking place.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, especially if you consider that a agile work stream is prioritizing the things that are most important to them and they're investing in them. But it's not necessarily making the decision of which agile work stream gets money and how much of it.
Yep.
And this seems to be a layer above that that can help facilitate that action.
Correct.
Interesting. Let's shift into folks that are in the ServiceNow space. Let's say I've been operating ServiceNow. I'm a professional that works with ServiceNow today. Where should my skills be going? If I'm sort of comfortable with IT service management, I'm comfortable working with ServiceNow. Where should I be evolving my skills? What are the things I should know more about in working with ServiceNow?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So just like we had kind of talked about originally, we started with IT service management, we moved into IT business management. There's a number of other things that ServiceNow is now becoming highly capable of doing from a product standpoint, that an individual that's maybe classically been focused in the IT service management space may want to strongly consider learning how does the process work in an organization, in addition to how do you technically actually support a platform that operates and lives in that space. So a couple other additional examples in conjunction with ITPM would be IT operations management, which is much deeper in the inner workings of the way the IT organization does operate. Some of them that land outside of IT would be customer service management. So we're finding that platform is the buyer of it. The person that leverages it is much more on the business side, not IT. And there's a lot of value associated with it, and something that is highly valuable for organizations. Along with HR and security operations are some other facets and areas of which ServiceNow is more recently invested in. They moved into much more of the mature space, and I would recommend a professional spending some energy around learning, because that's ultimately where the platform's going, is across beyond just IT service management.
Let's talk about customer service management now that you brought it up. I think that's a good topic. When is ServiceNow a good choice for customer service management versus a Dynamics, for example? Where is ServiceNow's natural proclivity toward helping serve customer cases and deliver on those cases a better fit than using Dynamics, and whereas Dynamics may be a better fit versus using ServiceNow?
Sure. So if an organization hasn't had a classical CRM solution, so when I think of Dynamics, I immediately jump to it being a CRM platform, while it also does do case management. So if an organization doesn't happen to have that in-house yet, a lot of times that's an indication of the fact that they may not have a very large, strong sales organization that has a large technology need that would need something like Dynamics or Salesforce. And then they would want to strongly consider just looking at leveraging customer service management to fulfill their needs and desires of their external customers. So that's a really good, I guess, indication or use case of why a customer may want to think that way in the way that they're looking at picking out products. On the flip side of it, it may be an organization that is only using case management within Dynamics. And they may realize that on-prem platform, it's time to look at moving it up to the cloud. And they're ultimately met with a choice of feature functionality and fit. Is that the best fit, or are they really using just case management and they're a robust ServiceNow organization that leverages it from an IT service management standpoint? And that would be another circumstance where they may want to strongly consider looking at using CSM.
It would seem like a less less sales-oriented organization, like a more product-centric organization would be a really good fit for ServiceNow customer service management. Especially one that receives cases in a technical way, or doesn't have a huge sales force, is out there interacting with customers and doing customer 360. It's more like I build a product, people engage with my product, and I'm already using ServiceNow for other focus purposes, and I'm building and using things like PPM and BM. And if I integrate that seems like that provides a really good fit versus maybe another integrated product.
Exactly. And then the other thing I would add is their customers expect it and experience like a portal to be able to interact with. So, and that's another differentiator of the product for ServiceNow, for the CSM product specifically, is it's a portal end user experience. You can further extend that into your external customers. where they can leverage virtual agent. They can leverage a lot of the things that an IT organization has grown up to leverage themselves to better serve their internal customers. Another great fit from a CSM slash external customer perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about integrating virtual agent in that way. When you think about skilling in ServiceNow, how difficult is it for someone to get upskilled in some of these newer parts of the tooling?
There's a lot of training that sits out there. So ServiceNow is excellent with their training portal. There's a lot of content that's available at everyone's fingertips as it relates to being able to get after certifications and such. I think it just boils down to what's really compellingly important is having a love and an affection associated with the business processes that kind of run underneath the platform.
Yep.
So it's the technology is easily learned. You have to have an inclination and/or an interest and desire to want to understand what does that tool actually, from a workflow standpoint, how does it empower an organization?
Common theme here seems to be that IT is shifting, and ServiceNow's functions attached to IT are shifting, as well as the skills that the professionals caring for ServiceNow need to shift as well.
Exactly.
Interesting. All right, last question.
Sure.
What makes you love what you're doing? You've chosen to evangelize, go to market, engage customers, leveraging ServiceNow. What makes that something you get up every day and say, yeah, I want to go do this?
Being able to talk to a customer and empower them to run IT like a business. And that leads to them being much more valuable to their organization and ultimately increases the level of satisfaction to their customer base. So that's what gets me excited, having the variety of being able to talk to a number of customers that are looking at doing that exact thing. Some customers that have never experienced ServiceNow for the first time, so it makes it fun to kind of show them what the product looks like and how quickly that space has evolved versus where they're at with their current tooling. And on the flip side of it, a lot of working with a number of organizations that have had the product historically, but may have not gotten everything that they wanted to and needed to desired out of the platform, and being able to help them seize the results that they're looking for.
Yeah, especially helping them explore things beyond ServiceNow's ITSM, right?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of companies have had high penetration of ServiceNow ITSM, but haven't leveraged more advanced capabilities that are what their business needs now.
Exactly.
Yeah, that provides a huge amount of value, so I can understand that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Love
for
it.
inviting me.
And thanks for joining us on Concurrency Career 30.